Hey guys, tonight we journey across vast steppes and into a tent heavy with smoke and silence, where a man in fur-trimmed robes squints at the sky, then at you, then back at the sky again. You're standing at the edge of the known world, or at least the edge of Mongol patience. Because tonight, lightning flickers on the horizon, the wind tastes like snow, and Genghis Khan's grandson wants to know whether the next sunrise will bring good weather, or the wrath of the heavens. And guess what? You're the court astrologer. This is medieval Mongolia. Not the Hollywood version with dramatic horseback charges every 5 minutes, but the real one. Muddy boots, flickering yak fat lanterns, and a nomadic empire stitched together by silk arrows and a terrifying efficiency at organizing postal systems. You've got charts, you've got sheep entrails, you've got a job to do. You probably won't survive this, especially if your weather prediction ruins the next invasion. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Also, if you're listening right now, I'd love to know where in the world are you tuning in from, and what time is it there? Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. It begins in Karakorum. You trudge through slushy streets that aren't really streets. The capital of the Mongol Empire is less Versailles and more heavily upgraded camp, but it's impressive in its own gritty bone-scented way. Bronze cauldrons boil near yurts. Traders shout in 5 languages. Somewhere nearby, a camel sneezes. You ignore all that. You're late. And that's bad because the sky is brooding and the Khan does not enjoy uncertainty. Inside the great tent, you bow low. The air is thick with incense and scorched fat. Gilded swords hang beside rough-tanned hides. In the center sits Guyuk Khan, grandson of Genghis Eyes, narrowed lips set in a thin line. He gestures to the window flap where clouds gather like an omen that forgot to RSVP. Well, he asks. Just that. You unroll your scrolls. They're creased and slightly damp thanks the drizzle outside, but legible. You mutter something about Sagittarius rising and Jupiter being in a favorable house. A court scribe starts scribbling. A guard snorts. You wish you had something better than cloudy divinations and vague star alignments. But here's the thing. Predicting weather in the 13th century Mongol Empire is less precise science and more educated theatrical guesswork. You've got observations, you've got patterns, you've got a gut feeling based on the wind smelling like wet leather and impending doom. Still, you say it a cold front, but no storm. March will hold. The Khan studies you, like he's weighing whether your words are good enough to keep you alive. Then he nods once. That's it. No applause, no feast, just survival. For now. You retreat from the tent into the growing chill. The wind bites your cheeks and the sky rumbles again like it's offended you spoke on its behalf. Historians still argue whether Mongol rulers truly relied on astrologers for tactical decisions. Some say yes, charts and omens were as important as scouting reports. Others think the astrologers were more ceremonial, offering a kind of cosmic reassurance that didn't really matter until it did. But tonight, you definitely mattered. Because weather wasn't just weather. It was mobility, morale, the difference between a successful siege and a frozen army too stiff to draw bows. You head to your quarters, a smaller yurt tucked behind the main hall. Inside, it smells like soot and pressed herbs. Your apprentice, barely 13, is boiling something that may or may not be edible. You nod at him and collapse onto a folded blanket. He asks if the Khan believed you. You shrug. That night, sleep comes late. The wind howls across the steppes like something ancient has woken. You dream of stars rearranging themselves into warnings too complex to read. You wake just before dawn. It hasn't snowed. Yet. You step outside. The sky is pink at the edges. A hawk circles, A lone rider crests the hill, likely a messenger. You sip from your cracked cup and breathe in the scent of burnt pine and wet wool. Today will be clear. You hope, and far off in the distance beyond the mountains and the dust, you know spring is coming. Or not. Either way, the stars will get the blame. The Khan's order goes out before breakfast. You hear the horns before you finish your tea, 2 short, 1 long. Mobilization. You swallow fast, burn your tongue, and grab your charts. Because when the Mongol army moves, it doesn't stroll, it unfurls like a steel and horse tsunami. And guess what? Your prediction just became part of the logistics plan. Outside your yurt, the city is already shedding its skin. Tents collapse in orderly chaos. Men in fur hats lash bundles onto oxen. A girl barely tall enough to see over a horse loads arrows into lacquered quivers with terrifying efficiency. You sidestep a goat, duck a swinging polearm, and hustle to the command yurt with the air of someone who really hopes the weather holds. Inside, the military council is gathered. Maps stretch across rugs. Markers made of bone and horn indicate troop clusters. Guyuk Khan stands at the head, flanked by generals who look like they've never smiled. Repeat it, he says without looking at you. You do. Fair skies for 7 days. Cold, but manageable. No blizzards expected. Someone scoffs. You recognize him, Subutai's son Bektor. A fine warrior, no patience for astrology. He mutters something about sheep bones being better indicators than stars. You hold your ground. There's a high-pressure zone moving south, you offer, as if that means anything to anyone in this room. Goyuk squints, and if the pressure changes, then we retreat or freeze, you say honestly. A beat of silence, then the Khan grins. It's not a nice grin. Very well, he says. We move east, and just like that, the gears of war grind forward. You ride with the rear caravan sandwiched between a mule cart of dried fish and a philosophical blacksmith who insists he can smell lightning before it strikes. The air is crisp, the earth hard. The horses snort steam. You scribble cloud formations in your notes with half-frozen fingers. The Mongol army isn't just terrifying because it's fast. It's terrifying because it's organized. Riders split into tumens, 10,000-man divisions each one, carrying supplies like a mobile supermarket, yurts, cauldrons, siege tools, fermented mare's milk. Nothing is wasted. Nothing is random. You're expected to keep track of celestial signs along the way. Every morning you wake before dawn and squint at the stars, marking their angles with a wooden quadrant and muttering calculations into the wind. It's mostly for show, but it helps you think. And sometimes, just sometimes, you notice patterns that make your skin prickle. Historians still argue whether Mongol astrologers were true scientists or merely sanctioned mystics. Some believe they borrowed heavily from Chinese astronomy, mixing real calculations with local omens. Others think their predictions were politically staged, just vague enough to always be right. But out here, riding into the unknown, the line between fact and faith grows blurry. On the 3rd day, snow flurries start to dance on the wind. You say nothing at first. Maybe they'll pass. But by evening, the air is thick with drifting flakes, and the ground starts to vanish under white. The soldiers adapt quickly. Furs are pulled tighter. Fires burn higher. But you can feel the glances. One reaches you by nightfall. Bektor again boots, crunching snowjaw like granite. You said 7 clear days, he growls. It's a light squall, you reply. He spits. Not at you exactly, but near enough. The last astrologer we had got it wrong too. He's in a pit. You nod. I'll try to do better. Later you climb a low hill and stand alone under a sky now scrubbed clean by the storm. The stars glint with a hard edge. Mars is bright and low. That usually means conflict. But when doesn't it? You wrap your cloak tighter and think back to your old teacher, an old man in a tower near Samarkand, who insisted that stars don't control fate, They just whisper about it. The wise man listens, he said, but never bets the house. You bet the whole empire. The morning breaks clear again, and the mood lifts. The snow glistens ankle deep and melting fast. Someone throws you a chunk of dried cheese in thanks. You catch it without smiling. Your job isn't done. You sketch new charts that evening, copying the arc of the moon with a stick in the snow. A small boy watches you and asks what you're drawing. Weather, you say. He squints at your constellation doodle. Looks like a goat. You blink. It kind of does. You nod. Then maybe tomorrow will be stubborn. He runs off laughing. And for a moment, you wonder if the future is just that simple, reading goats in the sky and hoping for the best. You wake to hoofbeats, not the thunderous kind that come with war cries and banners, but the measured clop of a scout returning too early. Always a bad sign. By the time you untangle your blanket and fumble outside, the camp is already stirring. A cluster of men has gathered around the returning rider. His horse steams like a blacksmith's forge. His face is pale under the dust. The pass is blocked, he says. You blink at the words. Blocked is not a word the Mongols like. Obliterated, maybe. Conquered. Frozen, even. But blocked landslide, someone asks. The scout shrugs. Maybe. Or snow. Or the mountain fell asleep on itself. You're summoned moments later. The Khan wants an explanation. And no, the mountain fell asleep is not one he'll accept. So you dig into your satchel for the star charts. They flutter in the wind, stiff with frost useless. You reach instead for the wooden quadrant you carved yourself, angle it toward the sun, and begin mumbling about celestial inclination and windward slopes. In truth, you're stalling. Because the truth is, you didn't see this coming. Historians still argue whether Mongol astrologers were blamed unfairly for natural disasters or used as convenient scapegoats when nature refused to obey. The line between divine interpretation and environmental science was thin and slippery when frozen. By midday, Guyuk Khan stands beside you on the ridgeline, gazing out at a valley choked in snow and silence. No path, no movement, just white wrinkled hills folding over themselves like old parchment. He doesn't speak for a while. Then, can we go around? You shake your head. Too far, too late. A long pause. Can we go through? You sigh. Only if the snow softens and the goats sprout wings. Another pause. Then a smirk. Then we wait. It's the only sensible call. But the army doesn't like waiting. Mongols are not built for stillness. So they stretch their limbs with mock duels and arrow practice, and occasionally chasing each other with frozen goat legs like swords. You watch it all from your yurt, trying to recalculate. The blacksmith stops by with fermented milk that smells like betrayal. You said clear skies, he says, sipping. I did, you admit. I also said nothing about blocked mountain passes. He snorts. Should've asked the goats. He leaves you a strip of dried yak. You consider it a peace offering. That night the camp is quiet in a strange way. No drumming, no fire songs, just the wind and the distant bark of a restless dog. You sit by your lamp tracing the curves of Orion with an ink-stained finger. The stars are so sharp they hurt to look at. You remember what your teacher said. Prediction is not control. It's dance. You never learn to dance. Sometime past midnight, a shadow moves across your tent. You go still. But it's only a messenger, a boy, maybe 12 teeth chattering, holding a note sealed in wax and urgency. It reads, he wants to know if the thaw will come sooner. You step outside and squint at the sky. The moon is pale, the clouds thin. There's a ring around the moon, a halo made by ice crystals high in the atmosphere. Some call it a bad omen. Others say it means change. You write back possibly, with prayer, or patience. You don't sign your name. He knows who it's from. The next day, the army moves back just a little, enough to find flatter ground. They dig shallow trenches, set up defenses, prepare for delay. Your stock rises slightly. The snow hasn't killed them yet. And then, something unexpected, a visiting shaman. He arrives wrapped in wolf fur, humming through his teeth, claiming to have ridden the edge of a dream where the sky peeled back to show the future. He draws circles in the dirt tosses. Bones makes alarming noises at a tree stump. The men are spellbound. You're annoyed. He declares a spirit lives in the pass and must be appeased. Guyuk watches him with curiosity and then turns to you. Well, you shrug. If it works, I'll chart the results. They perform the ritual at dawn. Drums smoke a bit of goat hair burned in a shell. The clouds remain indifferent, but the mood lifts. Spirits, appeased or not, are now someone else's department. And strangely, 3 days later the snow shifts. The edges of the pass loosen. A trickle of meltwater winds down the slope like a whisper. Enough for scouts to move through. Enough for Guyuk to nod. Tell your stars, he says. They've earned their milk. You bow. Not deeply, but enough. You ride on, following the army as it slips through the newly opened corridor. Cold still bites. Wind still sings. But the path is open. Sometimes all a prediction needs is a little delay. The pass narrows. Ice hangs like teeth from the cliffs. Each hoof step echoes longer than it should. You ride near the rear of the column behind the baggage carts ahead of the cooks. From time to time, a soldier passes and mutters "Sky Reader" under their breath, not unkindly, but not fondly either. You've become a kind of walking footnote. Still you're here, still moving, and that matters. By evening, the army breaks into a wide basin ringed with pines, all leaning in the same wind-blown direction, like gossiping old women. It's warmer here slightly. The snow crunches instead of groans. The horses roll happily in it, legs flailing like awkward dancers. You set up your yurt near the edge, facing east, always east. That's where the stars wake first. And tomorrow is a good night, clear skies, high moon, and a planetary conjunction that hasn't happened in 17 years. If you can chart it correctly, you might redeem your shaky reputation. Assuming the sky cooperates, you spend the afternoon preparing. Notations on waxed parchment, a cleaned lens made from polished quartz, a battered sextant that belonged to your uncle still bearing the scorch marks from the time he tried to chart a meteor and dropped it into a brazier. That evening, the Khan visits again. Alone, which is rare. He enters quietly and settles beside your lamp like he belongs there. How long have you watched the sky, he asks. You think about it. Since I could stand. Maybe before. My mother swore I stared at the moon more than her face. Guyuk chuckles. Maybe that's why you're not married. You shrug. Or maybe I know too much. He picks up a chart, tilts it sideways. What's this Part A record of Jupiter's position last spring? He squints. Looks like a drawing of a sheep being kicked by a goose. You sigh. It's interpretive. He grins. So's everything. My generals read goat bones. You read stars. I read people. A long pause. Do you ever lie that catches you? You meet his eyes? Sometimes, but only to those who ask the wrong questions. He nods, sets the chart down, and leaves without another word. Historians still argue whether Guyuk Khan relied more on mystical advisors or pragmatic generals. He certainly kept both. But who had more influence? That's the part no one agrees on. Perhaps even Guyuk didn't know. That night the sky performs. Venus hangs low and brilliant like a dropped jewel. Mars smolders red beside it. The constellations settle into their familiar arch. You chart it all carefully, fingers shaking a little from the cold and something else reverence maybe. And then the comet arrives, small, faint, but moving fast across the eastern arc. a sudden intruder in your perfect diagram. You blink, check your tools, and then laugh aloud. Uncharted, unexpected, wonderful. You don't tell anyone right away. Let it be yours for a moment. In the morning, you bring your findings to Guyuk. He's eating fermented mare's milk cheese, which smells like someone's boot forgot how to be food. You mention the conjunction. He nods. Then you mention the comet. He stops chewing. A sign? You shrug. That depends. What are you hoping for? He grins. Victory. You raise an eyebrow. Then yes. Obviously. He tosses you a piece of dried meat. Good. We march tomorrow. And just like that, the army begins to coil again. Tents packed, bows inspected, spears tipped with fresh obsidian. The scouts spread out like fingers, testing the pulse of the road ahead. You walk through the bustle and feel the tug of history brushing your sleeves. You won't be in the records not by name. Not unless someone bothers to etch that guy who said it would snow less into a rock somewhere. But still you're here, still advising, still watching the sky and guessing what it might mean. Later that afternoon, you stumble across a boy kneeling beside a bush. He's poking something with a stick. What is it, you ask? He looks up. A beetle. You peer closer. It's dead, frozen stiff. Why poke it? He shrugs. To see if it changes. You nod slowly. Let me know if it does. That's basically my whole job. He doesn't laugh, just keeps poking. That night as the army settles, someone tells a story around the fire, a tale of a giant bird that stole the moon and had to be chased by 12 warriors with flaming ropes. It makes no sense geographically or physically, but the delivery is solid. You listen, eyes on the stars again. The comet is gone. Not surprising. They do that. You scratch out a quick note on your parchment. Signs don't last. Meanings do. Then you underline it twice. Not for history. Just for you. The morning air tastes like old ice and dry wood smoke. You're already up, boots laced, and notes tucked into your satchel when the horns sound. 3 sharp blasts, each one a little lower than the last. That's the signal break camp. Head east. You trudge to your assigned horse, which is less a noble steed and more a sullen meatball on legs and mount, with the practiced grumble of someone who knows the next 12 hours will include at least one saddle blister and possibly a surprise blizzard. The Khan's column snakes forward banners, snapping dogs, barking wheels, squeaking in protest. You ride at the edge, your eyes half on the road, half on the sky. Always the sky. And the clouds are shifting. Not just drifting lazily, as they often do, but reforming. Curling in unfamiliar ways. You see high cirrus trails like claw marks and a faint ring around the sun by noon. That ring is a warning. It means ice in the upper atmosphere. It means pressure is falling. It means don't unpack anything too permanent. You jot down notes while chewing dried mutton, so tough it might legally qualify as punishment. The ink freezes if you write too slowly. Classic Mongol fieldwork. That afternoon, a rider pulls up beside you. Not a soldier, a monk. Robe hitched to his knees, beard crusted with snow. He stares at you like someone who's already made up his mind. You're the one who reads the sky. You nod. Among other things, he leans in. There's talk you've seen a comet. You sigh. There's always talk. They say it signals death. Well, you shrug. Technically, it signals ice crystals' orbital deviation and reflected sunlight, but sure death if you like metaphors. He frowns. The Khan listens to you. He listens to a lot of people. He should pray more. You smile. I'm sure he appreciates your input. He rides off in a huff, robes flapping like angry laundry. Historians still argue whether the Mongol court favored shamanic advisors over imported astrologers. The truth? They used both. If one failed, the other got a chance. If both failed well, there's always exile. Or worse, You camp that night in a valley where wind echoes like distant drums. The sky's gone gray. Your bones tell you snow is coming, but you don't say anything yet. Let the storm make its own entrance. As you settle near the fire, a young girl brings you fermented mare's milk. You sip it politely, trying not to grimace. It tastes like someone dared yogurt to become beer. The girl sits cross-legged and watches you. Can you really read clouds? I try. Can you read people? You glance at her. Only the loud ones. She grins. Then you're probably very good at reading my uncle. You raise an eyebrow. Who's your uncle? She points at a man snoring thunderously across the fire, half his foot in the flames. You nod. Exceptionally readable. She giggles, then asks, "What does the sky say about me?" You pause, look up, then back at her. It says you'll ask better questions than most grown-ups. That earns a solemn nod. Later, while the camp sleeps, you step away from the circle of light and stare up. The clouds have thickened. No stars, no moon. Just a pale glowing smear above the eastern ridge. Tomorrow will be hard. Travel will be slow. But you've seen worse. You climb back into your tent and adjust your satchel under your head like a pillow made of paper and ambition. You drift into a light doze, dreaming of equations you've never solved and languages you've never learned, but somehow understand. When morning comes, it arrives on snow, heavy, relentless, falling sideways and upwards, and every which way like the wind forgot what direction means. The camp is a blur of white and shouted orders. You're called into the Khan's tent. Inside, the warmth is startling. Braziers smoke, furs pile high. The Khan sits near the center chewing with calm focus. "Well," he says, waving at the storm you called it. "I didn't call it you," reply. "I just didn't stop it." He snorts. "Same thing." One general speaks up. "We should stay put." Another growls. "We lose time." Guyuk looks to you. You hesitate. "There's a clearing ahead," you say. 2 days. If we push now, we get there before it gets worse. If we wait, we're stuck here much longer. He considers. "And the comet it left you answer." But it didn't leave quietly. That gets a few raised eyebrows. Guyuk smiles slowly. "I like riddles. You'll like dry firewood more." He laughs and waves you off. The next 2 days are brutal. Horses stumble. Wheels crack. Tents collapse under wet snow. But you reach the clearing. Just before the worst of it. They start calling you Cloudbiter behind your back. You don't mind. You've been called worse. The snow settles behind you, like a curtain falling after a bad play, clumsy, too heavy, and way too late to save the ending. But here in this brief clearing, the sun finally shows its face. Low and golden, like it's apologizing for hiding. You tilt your head up, feel its warmth on your eyelids, and think for half a breath that maybe things are stabilizing. Then someone screams. It's not a war scream, not a blood scream. It's that shrill pitch people hit when they've just seen something that breaks the rules of their world. You sprint toward the sound, dodging around bundled forms and startled horses. When you reach the source, you almost slip because what you're looking at isn't violence, it's weather. A wall of ice is rising in the east, not a glacier, not snow. Something else, like frozen mist, rising vertically, shot through with columns of light. Pale blues and ghost greens ripple inside it, like someone took the northern lights and snapped them into glass. Everyone around you is staring. One soldier mutters, "It's the end." Another whispers, "No, it's the gods." You whisper something too, but it's less spiritual and more anatomical. Then you grab your waxed parchment and sketch it with trembling hands. You have no name for what you're seeing. Not yet. Later historians will argue whether this was a rare polar stratospheric cloud, a mirage effect called a light pillar, or mass hallucination. For now, it's just beautiful and terrifying. Goyuk appears behind you, squinting. You predicted this? You shake your head. No one predicts that. Good, he says. Would have made you suspicious? He walks off, cape flapping, clearly pleased by the apocalypse tier light show. That night around the fire, people start treating you differently. A little more space, a little more deference. Some won't meet your eyes. Others stare too long. You've officially entered that liminal category Mongols reserve for shamans, tricksters, and oddly behaved wolves. Not trusted, not mistrusted, just watched. You decide to lean into it. In the morning, you begin carrying a small bundle of carved bones, goat knuckles polished smooth. You pretend to cast them sometimes when asked a question you don't want to answer. The Khan loves it. The generals roll their eyes. The foot soldiers ask for love fortunes. One even offers you a chicken in exchange for help wooing a girl who, by all accounts, would rather kiss a frozen saddle. You accept the chicken. You don't eat the chicken. You draw a tiny hat for the chicken and declare it a fellow weather diviner. The Khan nearly chokes laughing when he sees it. Now people call the bird Cloudbiter Jr. The days stretch on. You track wind speed with falling ash. You measure dew weight in the mornings. You teach yourself to read frost patterns on horsehair. Every bit of data becomes a whispered story to those who listen. But things are shifting again. The weather isn't just strange, it's wrong. Rain falls in places it shouldn't. The sky stays red long after sunset. Horses grow skittish. Dogs howl at nothing. And people start having dreams. Not normal ones, shared ones. You hear the same fragments repeated around different fires, the same mountain glowing with impossible light, the same black sun, the same whispering stars. Even you dream now not in words, but symbols. Circles spiraling into nothing. Birds flying backward. A river flowing uphill. You try to write it down, but your ink freezes. Again. Guyuk summons you late one evening. His tent is quiet, the brazier low. No guards inside, just you, him, and the sound of distant wind crawling down the mountainside. I had a dream, he says without preamble. Everyone's having them. This one wasn't mine. You blink. He continues. It felt like someone borrowed my head to deliver a message. What kind of message, he hesitates? That it's time to stop, to change, or be changed. You look at him. Hard. Guyuk, son of Ogedei, grandson of Genghis man who's burned cities and crowned khans, looks genuinely afraid. You ask, do you believe it? He doesn't answer. The next morning, he cancels the advance, orders the whole army to hold position, and send messengers west, to Karakoram, to China, to the coast. You're not told why, but you suspect the weather had something to say about it. Historians still debate what caused the Mongol Empire's sudden strategic pauses. Some say internal politics. Others cite logistics, rebellions, or diplomacy. A few outliers suggest something more esoteric, like omens, or dreams, or a single man with too many notes, and a surprisingly influential chicken. You spend the next week observing cloud layers and pretending to not overhear high-level meetings. Cloudbiter Jr. lays an egg. The camp erupts in celebration. You name the egg forecast. It's a hit. But the sky won't let you rest. The temperature swings violently, freezing at dawn, warm by midday, then frigid again by evening. Your joints ache. Your instruments warp. Your breath becomes a constant fog. You warn Guyuk again. Something's coming. What kind of something? Not a storm. Not exactly, just shift. He nods. Prepare. And so you do. Not by stockpiling food or sharpening swords, but by sketching, writing, memorizing. Because what's coming might not be weather. It might be change, and you want to see it. Measure it. Name it. If it doesn't swallow you first, the wind won't stop. It whips through the valley with a sound like old gods coughing. It rattles the tents, throws grit in your eyes, makes the dogs tuck their tails, and the horses roll their eyes white. You stand outside Guyuk's command tent, cloak snapping behind you like a sail caught in a storm, and you try not to fall over from the sheer absurdity of it all. You're an astrologer, a stargazer. You were trained to track eclipses, plot comet returns, maybe warn the Khan when Mars entered a bad house. You were never meant to stand knee-deep in sand, watching a line of mountains vanish beneath a cloud of airborne dust. Like it's a magic trick gone horribly wrong. But here you are. You raise your hand to shield your eyes. You squint. You fail. The dust laughs at you. North wind, someone says beside you. You glance over. It's a scout, wrapped in wool face, mostly covered, except for the eyes which are red and narrowed. He spits into the dust and says, "That means trouble. Doesn't everything you mutter?" He shrugs. North wind's the worst. You return to your tent and unroll your star charts. Except joke's on you, the stars haven't been visible for nights. The sky's been a sheet of rippling cloud, backlit with a strange amber glow. If the heavens are speaking, they've gone whisper mode. Or they're sulking. You light a lamp, begin to write. Last night you dreamed again. Not of stars or horses or even weather. This time it was a sea, endless dark heaving, and a single boat drifting with a torn sail. You were in the boat, alone, except you weren't. Someone was singing, but you couldn't see them. You wake up coughing. Your lungs feel coated in dust. You sip water, then pour a little into your shallow bowl for Cloudbiter Jr. She blinks at you. Peck pecks the rim. A prophet in feathers. Outside, the storm finally breaks. But it doesn't end. It just changes. The wind slows, the light dims, and from the hills comes something colder, wetter, more ominous. Rain, but not the kind you know. This rain is slanted, needling, sharp as arrowheads. It stings through wool and soaks in seconds. The camp becomes a swamp. Tents sag, fires die, soldiers swear. You huddle under a canvas awning, sketching the angle of rainfall with one hand and using the other to shield your notebook. It's futile, but you keep trying. Because this is the job now. Not just observing weather, but recording its madness. Guyuk finds you that evening soaked to the bone but smiling. You were right again, he says, voice hoarse, about the rain, about it not being normal. You nod. He lowers himself onto a crate beside you, groaning as his knees crack. You both stare at the sloshing mud between your boots. You ever wish you'd just lied to me? He asks. Every day. He laughs hard and sharp. Then falls quiet. Tell me something, he says. You brace. If I ordered the whole army to turn around, would the sky let us go? You blink. Is the sky in charge now? Feels like it. You look out over the camp, dark shapes moving through slush silhouettes against flickering fires, the low sound of wind brushing canvas. I don't think it wants to kill us, you say finally. No, I think it wants to change us. He doesn't like that. You can tell by the way his jaw sets, by the way his fingers drum his thigh in tight controlled taps. Mongol rulers don't like being changed. They're used to being the change. But even Guyuk isn't above the clouds. That night you gather a few trusted apprentices and teach them how to read windborne dust, how to weigh a frost-veined feather, how to tell the difference between a rain that feeds and a rain that curses. You light a fire in your tent and set your scrolls around it like a circle of silent monks. The tent smells of wax smoke and faint poultry. You teach them about solar halos and blood moons, about northern fogs and southern mirages. You tell them quietly what the old astrologers feared most, that the sky could turn on you. That sometimes the stars vanish, not because they move, but because you've been moved. Historians still argue, whether Mongol strategy ever involved climate assessment. Some think you were a novelty and eccentric kept around to amuse the Khan. Others believe you were the Empire's secret weapon, helping time invasions with seasons and sky signs. One theory suggests your notes eventually influenced Chinese meteorological records. Another claims you were forgotten entirely, but your apprentices will remember. Even if the stars go quiet, and the rain won't stop. The next morning, the sky clears, but it's a trap. The sun rises pale and eerie, casting sharp shadows that make the camp look like a miniature model of itself. The air smells electric, dry, like something has been wrung clean. You know what this means? Thunder. And you're right. Midday, the first peal cracks across the steppe like a whip snapping. Horses rear, men shout, the air thickens. Then the hail comes chunks of ice the size of walnuts pounding the earth with malicious glee. You dive under your cot with a sheepskin over your head. Outside chaos. After the storm, Gayek's tent is in tatters. So is half the grain, and your scrolls soggy, but not ruined. You dry them by the fire pages, warped, but words legible. Cloudbiter Jr. flaps her wings, disapproves of the moisture, and then promptly lays another egg. You take it as a sign. Things are still working. You murmur. At least, some things. The camp limps through the next few days. The skies fluctuate. 1 hour sunny, the next, filled with sheets of sleet. You start keeping time by thunder intervals. You build a makeshift sundial out of a spear and an old brass bowl. It tells you nothing useful, but people keep checking it anyway. One evening, a scout brings you a leaf. Green. Fresh. With a single drop of water still trembling at its tip. It came from the east, he says. You nod, then add it to your collection. Because every pattern matters now, even the hopeful ones. The leaf is still green 3 days later. You check every morning, gently lifting it from the polished stone where it rests, turning it in your fingers as if it might whisper its secrets. The drop of water is gone, of course, but the veins are still clear, the color still deep, a tiny miracle holding fast in the chaos. That's enough to earn it a place on your weather altar, an increasingly strange assortment of objects tucked into the corner of your tent. A feather that floated through the storm without a drop of water. A coin turned rust red by hail. The broken handle of a brush you were using when the wind knocked it from your hand. And now the leaf. Green, ridiculous, defiant. You light a little fire and mutter a few words. Not a prayer exactly, but something close. A hope. A bargain. Outside, the camp is stirring. Slowly, cautiously. Like a wounded animal testing its legs. You step out and stretch, cracking every joint that can be cracked. The air has that strange between-storm scent, all charged and clean. The horses are restless again. The dogs are twitchy. Cloudbiter Jr. clings to your shoulder like a limp hat and coos in a low, thoughtful tone. And then the messenger arrives, dust-caked, wide-eyed, and wobbling in the saddle. He doesn't even dismount, just throws a parchment at the nearest officer and slumps forward, muttering something about ice on the mountain passes, and the Khan demands speed. You're summoned naturally. Guyuk's face is flushed when you arrive. He's pacing again, which is never a good sign. His robe is damp around the hem, and his tea has gone cold. We're losing time, he says. You wait. He stops, turns. What's the best way through the Altai passes this week? You raise a brow. You mean with the ice storms? The falling rocks? The sudden snow squalls and ghost winds? That's the one. You consider. Tell the men to switch from open wagons to runners. Travel only at dawn. Avoid the second gorge near the crescent cliff. And this is important if they see frost on the red stones. Wait a day. Doesn't matter if it looks safe. Trust me. Guyuk exhales slowly. You sound very sure. I'm not. But I've learned to listen. to what you shrug. The weird stuff. He smiles. Just barely. Then waves you away. You leave with mixed emotions. Part of you is proud another storm decoded. Another route charted by gut and sky and signs that would make other scholars roll their eyes. The rest of you exhausted. Because being right out here doesn't bring applause. It brings survival. At best. That night your tent glows warm again. You lay out your scrolls, still wrinkled from damp, but serviceable. You write by lamplight. The weather continues to act like a mood-swinging dragon. Possible correlation between thunder and stomach cramps in the 2nd Division. Further study required? Cloudbiter Jr. pecks at your sleeve. You offer her a crumb. She declines with disdain. Somewhere outside laughter. Faint, but real. A game, maybe. Or a drinking contest involving fermented mare's milk and dares. You let it wash over you. Because life is stubborn, even when the sky is moody and the maps no longer mean what they used to. The next morning, you test the ice thickness yourself. You walk beyond the edge of camp, toward the stream that cuts through the rocky slope. It's half frozen now, curling with steam where it still flows. You kneel, press your hand to the surface. Listen. Not just for cracks, for tone, for memory. You've started thinking of ice as something alive, not friendly exactly, but opinionated, like an old woman who's seen too much to bother explaining herself anymore. You whisper something to it. It doesn't answer, but it doesn't break either. You return to camp with frost on your lashes and news in your bones. You tell the supply officers, delay the wagons by one more day. Let the frost settle, then move. They argue. Of course they do, but they listen. Because your guesses are no longer guesses, they're predictions. And you're right, too often now to ignore. Historians still argue whether the Mongol elite ever truly trusted their court astrologers. Some say yes, that the stars held great sway, and timing meant everything in battle. Others believe astrology was tolerated at best, mocked at worst, except when it accidentally proved useful. A few sources even claim astrologers were executed for bad weather. You try not to think about that part. Instead, you think about the green leaf on your altar. Still vibrant, still there. Later that week, the pass opens. The frost retreats. The sky holds. The army moves. No ambush. No avalanche. Just smooth, eerie quiet. As if the weather is watching you back, amused by the fact you noticed. Guyuk rewards you with salted meat and a thicker blanket. He doesn't say thank you, but you catch him glancing up at the sky before setting out. That's enough. That night you sleep better than you have in weeks. You dream of birds circling the moon, of stars bending into new constellations, of rain that falls upward and wind that sings in chords. You wake with the taste of salt on your lips. Cloudbiter Jr. is staring at you like you spoke in your sleep. You probably did. You wrap your cloak tight and step out into the chill. The horizon is soft with dawn. The tents shimmer with frost. Everything is quiet. For now. You breathe deep and feel the pattern shift, again subtle, strange, alive. Whatever comes next, you'll read it. Not because you can control it, but because someone has to try. It starts with the birds. Not your bird. Cloudbiter Jr. is currently asleep in your hood, like a feathered scarf. But the others. Crows mostly. You've learned to ignore their usual squawking. But this morning, something's different. They aren't calling from the treetops. They're circling. A slow, deliberate spiral above the foothills. You squint. That's not normal. You grab your bundle of scrolls, your bird, your dignity, which is only slightly crumpled from sleep, and head toward the nearest lookout post. It's barely dawn, and frost crunches under your boots, but the sky already feels thick, like it's holding something back. At the top of the rise, You meet a scout wrapped in layers of wool and paranoia. He offers you a horn of sour milk. You politely decline. He gestures toward the hills. Something's wrong. You nod. You feel it too. You squint again. A band of mist is pooling low, sliding between the ridges like it's trying not to be seen. The air smells sharp metallic. Not snow, not storm. Something else. You tug your hood closer. The scout speaks again. Saw a fox burying itself in the dirt yesterday. A fox. That's not right. You make a note of it. Foxes tend to know when the sky's about to bite. Back at camp, you lay out your weather altar. Green leaf, still green against all odds. Broken brush handle, rusted coin, and the feather you collected 3 weeks ago that refuses to curl no matter how wet it gets. You hum under your breath as you sort the scrolls. A pattern is forming. You've seen this before. Once. The year the rivers froze in mid-flow and the commander's tent ended up in a tree after a windstorm. You'd rather not relive it. You make your way to the general. Storm coming, you say. He frowns. We just had a storm. This one's different. How different, you pause. The kind of different where your cook might find his stew frozen before it finishes boiling. The general stares at you, then stares at the sky. Orders dig in. Reinforce the tents. Don't move for 3 days, maybe 4. Will it be snow? You hesitate. No, and that's the problem. By midday, the wind arrives, not in gusts, but in a single long exhale, like the world itself is tired. Dust spirals upward, not sideways. The fire pits won't catch. The dogs refuse to bark. Your bird won't come out of your cloak. By nightfall, the pressure drops. You feel it in your bones, in your teeth. Like someone turned gravity sideways. People talk in whispers. The torches hiss. The scouts return wide-eyed, reporting frozen waterfalls and fields of cracked ice where there used to be moss. You spend the evening drawing circles on the back of a scroll. Not star maps, not wind charts, just circles. Overlapping. Unending. Historians still argue whether the Mongol astrologers had genuine influence over military strategy, or whether they were ornamental like gold filigree on a blade. Some believe the astrologers offered real meteorological insight using patterns of the stars and planetary conjunctions. Others claim they were scapegoats, praised in calm, punished in chaos. At least one source says an astrologer was thrown into a river for incorrectly predicting spring. You keep that one in the back of your mind. That night the storm arrives in full. Not snow, not rain, not wind, but ice fog. You've only read about it. It's like breathing through powdered glass. Every sound muffled, every breath sharp. Visibility 0. The world becomes a white canvas, scraped thin with frost. You crouch near the tent's hearth, wrapped in 3 cloaks and your own regrets. Your scrolls are damp. Your tea is solid. Your bird is now a feathered balaclava. And then, someone screams. You rush outside, nearly slipping on a frozen tent flap. A shadow stumbles from the fog, and outrider clothes, crusted in white eyes, wide with something beyond cold. He says one word frozen. What? You shout. He points east. Frozen. Mid-step. You don't know what that means. Not really. But you nod anyway, because you're starting to understand something vital. Something they don't write in books or carve in jade. The sky doesn't care. It doesn't care how many soldiers you have, how many scrolls, how many prayers. It moves as it pleases, laughs when you try to map it, changes moods mid-sentence, and still you try. You gather the remaining scouts. You light a tiny fire. You lay out your last functioning chart and whisper, "Show me what I missed." You start tracing the bird patterns again, the feather curls this time. just slightly. You stare at it. It might mean nothing. It might mean everything. But it means something. You circle it with charcoal and write the word shift. You don't sleep that night. You wait for dawn, for whatever comes next. Not because you know how to stop it, but because someone has to notice, to remember, to write it down. The frost doesn't lift the next morning. It thickens, coats everything in a crust of silence. The camp is still a painting in pale grays and faded ochre. Soldiers shuffle like ghosts. The horse's breath hangs in the air unmoving. Your tea doesn't melt the ice from your lashes. It just steams into the cold and disappears. You whisper a joke to yourself, something about the weather being a little clingy today. No one laughs, but Cloudbiter Jr. peeks out from your hood and pecks your ear like a slow applause. You take it. You pack up what's left of your scrolls. Some are smudged. One is frozen in a curl like it's mid-sentence. You don't bother smoothing it. You're not chasing accuracy anymore. You're chasing patterns. And the pattern says, things are not improving. That afternoon, the general finds you. His beard has icicles in it. He doesn't seem to notice. How long will this last, he asks. You answer honestly. I don't know. He grunts. Make another prediction anyway. You reach into your pouch and pull out a bone die carved with star symbols. You roll it in your palm. It comes up blank, worn smooth from use. You hold it up with a shrug. He actually laughs. It sounds hollow, but sincere. Historians still argue whether these weather readers in Mongol courts were scientists, priests, or stage magicians with excellent timing. Some claim they had Persian training. Others suggest Chinese influence, especially from Song Dynasty stargazers. One particularly bold theory proposes they used coded birdsong alongside celestial alignments to track seasonal shifts. That would have made you proud. But whether you were a fraud or a forecaster doesn't matter now, because the ice is creeping inward. Tents collapse under its weight. Meat freezes solid before it can be chewed. The scouts report a new horror rivers, flowing beneath a crust of glass-silent currents, deadly if broken. You stop writing for a day. Just sit by the fire with your fingers curled around your bird, wondering if anyone will read your notes after this. That night, you dream of stars that don't move, a sky stuck in place, the constellations refusing to turn. You wake with your face buried in the fur of your cloak and someone shaking your shoulder. The general's gone, they say. What do you mean gone? Left before dawn? Took 2 riders. Didn't say where. You stare at them and realize you're not surprised. Later that day, the wind returns, but not with snow, not with fog, with sound. A low howl that builds like a chant, a voice without a mouth. The soldiers stop. The horses panic. Even Cloudbiter shrieks and tries to crawl down your tunic. You look to the horizon and see it. A wall of light. Not fire, not aurora. Something in between. It rolls across the ice like a memory returning. Pale blue, bone white, a shimmer of dust and sun and wind. You whisper, don't move. No one does. When it passes, the camp is changed. The tents are intact, but frost-kissed. The people, not all accounted for. The cook is gone. So is the man who always muttered about goats. One of the translators. A drummer. Your seatmate from last night? No trace. No footprints. Just absence. You crouch, press your hand to the ground, and feel warmth. It doesn't make sense. But it does. Because the storm wasn't weather. It was history. It was something old coming back around. You return to your notes and begin writing again. You write not just what happened, but what it felt like. You describe the texture of the cold, the silence before the shimmer, the way time itself seemed to tilt like an unbalanced cart. You draw a bird. You mark the sky. You seal the scroll with a bit of sinew and slip it into your pack. One day someone might find it. Or not. but you'll have tried. Because that's what you do. You try to make sense of the sky. You walk through the camp and nod at each survivor. No one speaks, but they nod back. They're waiting. Not for spring, not for rescue, but for meaning. And you'll give it to them, even if you have to invent it, even if the stars never move again. You set the last scroll in the fire, just one. Watch it curl, crackle, vanish. A good story burns well. Then you step outside. The sun is rising, pale, pink, frosted. Cloudbiter flaps once and perches on your shoulder like a winged epilogue. You turn your face to the wind and breathe. Wind down begins below. The story settles now, like snow after a storm. The fire's gone quiet. The camp has dimmed. The sky, though cold, feels lighter than before. And you, listener, have followed every step, from prophecy to frost, from scroll to silence. Let the tension leave your shoulders. Let your breath soften. Let your eyes close slowly without effort, like the stars blinking out one by one at dawn. Maybe you're resting under a fur blanket in a Mongol tent, warmed by old stories and fresh embers. Maybe you're standing on a frost-bitten plain, your cloak wrapped tight, watching a strange shimmer drift across the ice. Or maybe you're simply safe in your own bed, letting your mind wander across centuries. Tonight, we don't need answers. Just wonder. Just the feeling that even in the coldest histories there was warmth. Even in vanishing, there was someone watching, someone remembering, someone like you. Let your breath slow with the turning of the last page. The fire may be gone, but its glow lingers. The stars may have shifted, but they still shine. You are still here, and that's enough. Thank you for joining us on this journey today. Maybe by now you've already drifted off to sleep, and if so, we hope this story brought you peace of mind and helped you rest a little easier. Deep sleep makes life better, and we're truly happy to be part of that. Until next time, sweet dreams.